I'm in need of a great big grin. I know where to go for some oxytocin when the whole world seems to be cold and mean. I know who to call for some dopamine. I'll be your Lucy, you'll be my Ethel. I'll be the Thelma, you'll be Louise, and we'll ride together till we reach the rainbow's end. Thank you for being my friend.
Hello, friends. So today is the P episode. Joey and I have been building up to this one for quite a while. In our friendship formula, we've got F is for fun and for free, R for radical responsibility, I, innocence, E, entitlement, N, naked, D, dignity, S, safety, H, hold yourself, I'm all of it, and finally P for purpose. Purpose. This is the why. This is the what's it all about? Why are we doing all this? What's the purpose? What is our higher purpose? So this one, I think, is an important little exclamation mark on the end of this formula. And this isn't the end of the podcast, but this is the end of, like, let's just say season 1 of this podcast. It's the what it is, and then we can go beyond this, and we'd love to hear your feedback about that. But let's see. So one thing that I'll start off here, Joe, because I'm circling back to that article that we referenced. I think it was probably back in episode 1, that UCLA study that was done in well, this article I'm looking at is from 2002. Yeah, I think it came out in 2002. So here's just a few things that it says. This landmark UCLA study suggests friendships between women are special. Now, this is not excluding friendships between men and women, and we're fluidizing everything, but this study was just about friendships among women. It says they shape who we are and why we are and what we are yet to be. They soothe our tumultuous inner world. They fill the emotional gaps in our marriages. They help us remember who we really are. And by the way, they may do even more. And this study goes on to talk about cortisol and the stress response, and it's the way that it triggers all manner of health challenges, having an inability to let the stress out, and friendships among women. And I'm imagining we could copy and paste a lot of this for men as well, but it just seems like this is just a smart thing to do. To it's a gift that we give ourselves. And just to kind of go back to the beginning, I don't think we need a friendship formula when all is well, when we're in the honeymoon stage with a friendship or with any relationship. We don't need rules of engagement. We don't need boundaries. We don't need prenups. We don't need any of those things when the emotions are just, when we just feel like, oh my God, you complete me. We're perfect. This is what we do when we get challenged. So I think the P for purpose is, why bother with the challenges? Why not just break up after the first signs of we're not perfectly compatible? We're doing things a little different. You zig when I zag. You are more conservative than I am. I'm a little more liberal. You're a little bit more wait, and I'm a little bit more hurry. Like, why bother? So the P in purpose is for us to really identify, for each person to identify what's in it for you. Why bother with doing the work that it takes? Because it does take work sometimes more often than others, depending. But why do the work? Why put in the time to learn this friendship formula, and by association, figure out your own version of the friendship formula? Why do it? So that's what I think we're talking about. What do what's in it for us to do? So Joe, I'll hand it over to you at this point, and let's see. What do you think about the P
Oh
in purpose?
my gosh. Anytime I think about purpose, I think about Viktor Frankl,
Mm,
man's search for meaning,
oh,
Holocaust survivor,
yeah.
neuro psychologist, um, who lived to tell the tale. And he talks about how life doesn't have meaning. You have to assign meaning to things, especially challenges. We have to assign meaning to them. The bigger the challenge, the more you want to assign meaning, because otherwise, so many of us would give up. People give up when things are hard. So, one of the things that I love about our friendship specifically, and the purpose of our friendship, and the purpose of the friendship circle that we have in our goddess circle, who, we've been together over 25 years now, is we assign the purpose of growth, of being our best selves, of reaching higher heights, of having equanimity, having being inspirational to each other and to others. I think that it would be easy to live in the old purpose of friendship, which is just to sort of have pity parties about how things aren't going well. I mean, just before we started this podcast, I asked for 5 seconds, and I wanted to have a sad face for 5 seconds, because
Mm-hmm.
the things that are heavy on my heart are really hard to be with.
Mm-hmm.
And you have some things that are heavy on your heart. And I'm like, could you just join me for 5 seconds in just letting ourselves be 5 seconds sad before we film? Because I wanted to sort of hold, for those of you that have heard all the other, letters in the acronym, I wanted to hold my inner child who's
Mm,
having a ton of sadness
mm,
about some
mm,
challenges. My son is challenged. My nephew is challenged. My friends are challenged. I, I have family members that are challenged. And as we get older, sometimes things get more challenging. Um, so I wanted 5 seconds to hold my sadness. And I didn't want more than 5 seconds, because
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I believe that, we're about to film the P in purpose, purpose for our friendships, and also purpose for our struggles.
mm-hmm.
And I love how many times you have talked about Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, and how important it's been to feel like there's a purpose for the struggles, the challenges, and to feel like those of us that are in the helping professions, like you and I are, people are watching us. They want to know how we handle those difficult things. Are we just two white women on the West Coast in the 21st century living in the lap of luxury, or do we have struggles? We both have a lot of struggles, and we have a lot of challenges. And so, for whoever's watching us, you're watching me, I'm watching you. We're
Mm,
watching each other. How do we get through these hard things? How much time do we use to complain before we turn our hurl into a pearl? How much
mm,
time do we
mm,
blame before we take radical responsibility? How much time do we want to act out or feel victimy before we hold ourselves? Like, the purpose of our friendship formula, ours specifically, mine and yours, and whoever's
mm-hmm,
listening, we want you
mm-hmm,
to find your own purpose. But I feel like the purpose, one of the purposes that's in the underbelly of our friendship and our rules for friendship, is we will assign purpose for our struggles. We will get through them. We will hold each other's hand through them. We will be compassionate, but we will help each other see what's the value of this difficult thing. No diamond exists without the heat and pressure that preceded it. No pearl exists without the irritation of the
mm.
sand that preceded it. Did I say no oyster? Did I say no pearl?
It
Did I
sounded
say
like pearl
pearl?
to me.
Okay, good. No pearl. Go be formed without the sand that irritated preceding it. So that's my first answer. I'm going to bat it back to you because you probably were having some popcorn responses too.
I am. Oh, I just love you, and I'm so glad that we've had the blessing to do this. And I love everything you just said. And Viktor Frankl, Joseph Campbell, come on around. I'm going to bring in another mystic mentor, Carolyn Mace. I remember hearing her years ago talking about relationships that relate to the chakras. And she was talking about like the tribal level people in our lives. And this was during a time when I was pretty new on my spiritual path. And I was noticing, and I was in therapy, 12 steps, like turning myself inside and out and having breakthrough. And I noticed myself feeling a little at odds with like the traditional family system. And I was judging my family, feeling like, why isn't everybody else doing this stuff? And I can't just talk about this. And I was feeling like a bit of an outsider in my own family for a minute. And she said something like, the value of the tribe is like, the tribe is good for what the tribe is good for. The tribal relationships are for birthdays, holidays, ceremony, things that like rites of passages. We have traditions with our tribe. And though that might not seem meaningful to the higher, more highfalutin part of ourselves that is reaching for the stars spiritually, we don't need that spiritual part of us really doesn't need tradition, and doesn't need, this is what we always do on Christmas, and this is what we wear, and this is what we eat, and all of that. But the human part of us really does get something. It meets some psychological needs for normalcy and place and time. It gives us a sense of where we exist in this wild world that's hurling through space at hundreds of thousands of miles an hour. It gives us a sense of place. So I had this little moment of appreciating my family for exactly who they were, exactly like, even if they never changed. I thought, I like keep my family, no matter how much I grow, because what's in it for me selfishly is I get to come home like the prodigal daughter. I have a place to come home to when I feel like I need a family hug, when I need to be reminded of my roots. And though that may not match always like the more esoteric needs of mine, those more basic human family needs are legit to the whole scope of me. And in some way, I would say friendships over time become tribal. They become family. They're the family of choice. And it gives me, I think it gives us, but I'll speak for myself. It gives me like just knowing that you're out there, knowing that the goddesses are out there. Suzanne, Wendy, Jody, Firestar, Gypsy up in heaven. Like, and my friend and my Goyles, Goils from high school that we've been meeting like like multiple times a year since high school. So I've known these people since I was 15. I've known one of these people, Nancy Owen, since I was 7 years old. The value of having these long-term friendships, it's almost like oxygen, because on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis, I might not think about it. It might just be like, it's okay. Oh, and Teresa, when my friend Teresa is also on the other side. But on a day-to-day basis, I might not think about it. But when one of them is going through something, when my friend Teresa passed away, when Gypsy passed away, I noticed the untethering of my internal psychology. It's like, oh, I didn't realize how hard I was leaning on these people to hold me up with some sense of like, there's invisible layers of confidence that we get from tribal relationships that have been through the fire many, many, many times, that have seen us through many incarnations and that still love us and that are still there, that are witnesses to our process and our journey and know who we were back then. There's layers and layers of self-esteem and confidence that I think are even undetectable to our psychology. It's like we can't even know how much they give us. But I know I feel on a regular basis, most of the time, I feel buoyed. I feel held up. And I think the why is because you don't get this. This isn't just something that comes from the honeymoon stage. It comes from longevity. It comes from years in the making. Every year, every interaction feathers the nest and makes it a little bit more of something that is like, that's ours. And I think it's a very human thing. The spiritual part of me could probably live on an island, could probably meditate all day and maybe not need it. Maybe. But the human part of me that is a massive part of this combination of who I am needs it. And the spiritual part of me gets fed from our goddesses and from this friendship. So it's just innumerable, these values and these blessings. Okay. I've said a lot.
Well,
Batting it back to you.
I think one of the things that you've said numerous times inside of the different podcast episodes we've done is that a lot of times the friendship acronym, the rules of friendship, they're not there during the honeymoon phase. They're necessary during, moments of challenge. And if you're going to have these long-term friends or friendships, then you're eventually going to need this P of purpose inside of the challenges. And so what I'm taking from what you're saying is that the purpose of going through this acronym inside of challenges with friends is that, like you've said, you can't make old friends and that they're earned. And that over time, what I'm hearing you say is that there's something really valuable here. There's a place of comfort. There's a place of tribe. There's a place where you can land, a place where there's invisible layers holding you up. And so it drives the P for purpose. And why do we continue instead of just getting uncomfortable and cutting people off? I think in one of the earlier episodes, did you want to say something?
No,
I can
I
hold
do,
it.
but keep going. No. Keep going. Keep going.
Okay. In one of the earlier episodes, and maybe a couple of them, I mentioned that I have a friend who I hurt in a really, really big way. And it was when I was really crunched under incredible stresses and losses. And my mask, I kept trying to keep my mask on. One of my masks is being a helper. And I thought I was helping and I harmed in a huge way. And recently we had a conversation recently, and it was like a year and 8 months ago since I hurt this friend, and then I moved
Whoa.
away to another
A
state.
year and 8 months?
A year and 8 months. That's how
Wow.
long I've
How did
been
that
gone.
happen? Oh my gosh. Okay.
And we hadn't spoken. And lucky for me, this friend of mine is a really big heart and is very generous and doesn't give up on her friends very easily. She's been very challenged in relationships as well. And so if she values something, she doesn't give up on it. And she kept saying, I'm here. I'm ready to talk when you are. I'm ready to talk when you are. And I kept saying, I'm not ready. And part of that not ready was that I didn't feel like I could face her.
Mm.
Even though I've been working on forgiving myself, and I would be so forgiving of you if you had been in my shoes, and I would wrap you in compassion, but it was a lot harder for me to do that. And so the reason I'm mentioning this whole thing is because we finally did face each other, and we talked about how we both were considering letting each other go. And for her, it was considering letting me go because she didn't know if I would behave this way again. Like, is that going to sideswipe her? Can she trust me? And for me, I thought about letting our relationship go because I didn't want to have to keep facing someone who I had to keep proving myself to.
Right.
I didn't have a lot of bandwidth for it. So we both admitted that. And I feel like it helped us kind of move, like be really authentic with each other. Excuse me. I think I was trying to cry earlier and my eyes stick together. Um, so I feel like it helped us to admit why we were trepidatious around continuing again, because my son has some severe neurodivergence, and um there's a lot of challenge with that. And since moving here and having a lot of grief in my process here, and then carrying all that shame with her, I didn't have like the energy. I didn't think I had the energy to like be someone who was strong enough to keep facing someone that I hurt. I hurt her, but I couldn't face her. And here she is willing, but I couldn't face her because I couldn't face my own lack of forgiveness. And yet, the purpose, I just want to keep coming back to the P for purpose. The purpose for using this acronym is to be our higher selves. It is to access deep responsibility. It is to grow, but it also is to be forgiving and merciful to our process as humans and our process as friends. And so I faced her. And if there weren't other people involved, like my partner, her best friend is my friend's wife. If there wasn't so much at stake, if I could have run away cleanly, I moved away, maybe we'd never see each other again. It's possible that I could have let go because it was, like, I don't want to be embarrassed. But with radical responsibility also comes radical forgiveness. And it has to include forgiveness for myself. It has to. I can't radically forgive others without radically forgiving myself. And so I used the friendship as purposeful to not just face what's difficult about me, which I do with gusto, but to face mercy for myself, which is harder. And if I'm going to teach that and preach that, then I better be that. So I think I'll put an exclamation point on purpose for friendship is it's not just for comfort and tribe, but it's for growth and for mercy and kindness, and to let your friends be as loving to you as you are to them, and for me to let my friends be as loving to me as I am to them. So I just wanted to add that little story.
Okay, that was awesome. And well, I want to say so many things, but let me just say this. I think it's true that there is the notion that people come into our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And just because there is this great connection, that doesn't necessarily mean it's supposed to last forever. I think there's a thought that it should last forever. Like if it's good and juicy, then you should be a lifelong friend, but it's not always the way of it. So oh my God. I'll just talk about this one. Okay. So years ago, I was very, very, very close with someone that I would have sworn she was a lifer. And we hit a snag, and it was like honeymoon for years, and then all of a sudden snag. And when the snag happened, her response was like it was like nuclear. And I felt like she threw me to the dogs. This is how I felt. I felt so devastated by her response. And so we took some space, and then I had a dream. I don't know if I think you might know about this part, but in my dream, I was her looking at Kelly, and I was sobbing in the dream about how much Kelly betrayed me as her. And I woke up from that dream feeling so much compassion and understanding. It was such an important dream for me because I felt like I got to walk 20 miles in her moccasins, so to speak. And I called her and said I'd love to connect. And I feel like you must have felt really betrayed by me, even though that was not my intention. In my mind, that wasn't at all what I was doing, but I felt what it was like to be in your skin as I imagine it. And it hurt so bad. And she thanked me because she said, that is how I felt. And so in my mind, I made up the story that, okay, now because I kind of got her, I witnessed her. And as a sidebar, one of the things that I've recently heard someone say was more than just being seen, we want to be felt. And I felt her. And I apologize for the part that I played in that, even though that wasn't my intent, even though my intent was 1,000 degrees different from how it showed up. I never would have intentionally hurt her. But even with all that, I felt like from that moment forward, and I tried in many, many, many ways, I felt like she still looked at me with suspicion. She looked at me like I was an enemy. I was guilty and needed to prove myself innocent over and over. And I did for several long experiences, kind of just said, you're right, I'm wrong, I'm sorry, let me do this to make it up. I felt like I bent over backwards because I wanted to honor her. Losing a friend feels like losing a limb in some ways when they become deep, deep, deep and soulful. And I felt like even with all that I had done, her trauma from her world made it so that she black and whited people. You were either good and on a pedestal and you're a saint and you're amazing and you are just beyond reproach, or you are evil and you are an enemy and you are bad, and never the twain shall meet. So eventually I had to cut my losses, and I simply just allowed time and space to go between us, and we haven't talked in many, many years, like I'd say even a couple decades at this point. And yeah, so I think the moral of that story is we don't, at least for me, in our religion, in our relationship religion, we don't discard people because they had a bad day, or because they royally screwed up, or because they hurt us deeply. I feel like there's the doing everything that's possible to restore, to repair, to heal, including time, including all the tools. And sometimes that's not enough. And in this instance, and one of her famous lines, so I'll quote her here, she would say, life is long. And I think that's sometimes true. Like, you never know how things will shape up. I can guess how it might go based on the last bunch of years, but you never know. And I'm always open to a miracle. But I know, just like what you were talking about with regards to this friend that you brought up, there's only so long we can sit inside the guilty penalty box and make amends and do all the things and do our part, but we can't. It's draining to live there, and it's not honoring to ourselves or to anybody to just so like throw ourselves under the bus that we deplete our energy, because some people might not forgive, and it might not be good for them to forgive. It might be absolutely right for there to be unforgiveness. It might be exactly what she needs or they need. But it's painful. It's like with a heavy heart, I say, we're not friends anymore. And on a spiritual level, just like, with any person we love, I think the love doesn't end when the apparent relationship ends. I think the love, the friendship, the true soul connection exists forevermore on a parallel plane, and in dreams and and spiritually speaking, we can still commune with them, and we can still hold dear the parts that were dear. Every once in a while, I'll hear a song that she introduced me to, and I let myself remember the good times, so I can keep those. They don't all have to go away because the friendship is over. But yeah, it's a loss.
Yeah. I think I love that we both told these stories from different angles,
Yeah.
because one of the ways I used purpose in this relationship I'm talking about is to be more forgiving to myself. And I feel
Hmm.
like the way you used purpose in this relationship was to be loving
Oh,
to yourself.
oh yeah, let's bring it back to purpose.
Yeah.
Oh, that.
Yeah. Just to be loving with yourself, and to know that you don't deserve to be flagellated for being a human that made a mistake, especially one who's so willing to admit and make amends and show up. And like, that's a big deal. Those things are big deals. And it's vulnerable. It's vulnerable to be the one that hurts someone. It's vulnerable when you wake up to it and realize you've hurt someone. It's vulnerable to continue to engage while you know people are looking at you with a watchful eye. Those take a lot. That takes a lot of energy, a lot of commitment, and a lot of valuing of the friendship. But
Right.
I think what you described is sort of black and white thinking. What you described is, it does not leave room for humanity. And I think it was smart of you to be responsible to, like, your inner child. If your inner child,
Hmm.
if you had a child and your child made a mistake with a friend and the friend was punitive and punishing, then you wouldn't want your child to hang out with that friend. Be like, you know what, you made a mistake, you didn't do it on purpose, you deserve to be forgiven. And if that person's going to mistreat you as a function of that, then I'm not sure that this is really a good friend for you. So if
Right.
you were a parent, you would think that for your child. And yet, how, and I wouldn't want anyone to beat my child up for making a mistake, but I will let myself beat myself up for a long time.
Right.
So I love both of our stories back to back, because it just shows dignity. It shows the dignity that we're trying to give ourselves, me to forgive myself, and you also to forgive yourself, but also to dignify yourself and not let people beat up on you. I was lucky. My person is not beating up on me. Your person was. And so
Right.
these are both different coins of loving ourselves with radical responsibility and dignity. The different coins in these stories, I think they're really important to show the purpose of
Yeah.
why we do what we do.
And I think there's, if we're going to look for, if we're going to ogle it, the pain is in like the heartbreak of losing somebody. But then if I move to the G, what's good about it? It makes the friends that I have, like you, like the goddesses, like the Goyles, like all the more precious, because not just anybody becomes a lifelong friend. I mean, sometimes, like this was the first upset that this particular friend and I had ever hit. This was our first storm, and we didn't make it. And it makes the friends that do come through the storms, like they suddenly become even more golden, and the appreciation factor goes out even more deeply for them. And there's something about those who mind don't matter, those who matter don't mind. And so the ones who are left standing at the end of the storms, since we don't have all the time and energy in the world anyway, the ones who are left standing at the end of the storm, they are the ones that get our love. They're the ones that get our attention, as opposed to trying to do the thing where we, like Groucho Marx said, why would I want to be a member of a club that would have someone like me for a member?
Mhm.
Like it's like trying to win back the friend that we lost, instead of, and then ignoring all the people that have remained. So in some way, as we get older, one of the blessings is that the road narrows, and the people that do remain, I think they are the ones that deserve our love, and our affection, and our attention. And I want to just add one other little thing here. So I was in a conversation with somebody yesterday about how there's micro ghosting in relationships. So there's the big ghosting, where somebody that you're like on, like Donkey Kong, you're talking every day, and then poof, they're gone like a ghost. and there's no rhyme, no reason. You don't hear from them. They just disappear. That's like ghosting with a capital G. And then there's the micro ghosting where there's just like our lives take on different paths. Like, for example, I didn't birth babies in this life. And there was a phase when all my girlfriends were having babies. And in this friend I was talking to yesterday, she was saying because fertility was such a sensitive area, she had to somewhat separate herself from her friends that were having babies. When they'd say, "Oh, come to the baby shower, come to this," she said, no, like she didn't go. And she did it for her own well-being. And it didn't mean that that's the end of the friendship. It just was like, not in this moment. I can't show up with full presence. I can say, like, it makes sense that certain people, we get like really career oriented, or like you and I doing this podcast, it's given us reason to be even more like connected and in a more day in day out kind of a way. So there's like a certain path that we're on, and that means by definition other friendships might maybe don't get all that attention. If you're a mom, that means that you probably, when you do have some time, you want to hang out with other moms because you want some compassion and understanding about what you're doing. If you're a career woman, you want to hang out with other women that are entrepreneurial or that are striving so that you can relate. And that might mean that there's some distance or some space that happens in some of our friendships. But I think the purpose, the big picture purpose, I'm so grateful that I don't know that I ever micro ghosted my friends that were having babies. I don't think I did. I felt like there was enough juice and enough love that there wasn't, I don't know, I felt like I got to be happy for them. But I'm grateful that over time, even though most of my friends, our lives look so very different, it might look like, why the hell are you all hanging out together? What do you have? What could you possibly talk about? There's still something that's golden, even in spite of those nuances and different directions that we've taken. It's still like at the end of the day, the gold is worth it. I don't know if that's making any sense, but just wanted to throw that in there.
Mm-hmm.
The ghosting and the micro ghosting, I think, requires some mindfulness because there's, we run the risk of losing the friend, or we like, can we keep the connection alive without hurting ourselves? I guess that's an individual question.
Well, I think micro ghosting, that's a funny one. I almost don't want it to have those words.
Yeah.
I don't want those to have those words because, even when you're in a romantic relationship, over time, it's like your two rivers running parallel. And then one
Yes.
person goes to school, or one person gets a new job, and the other person isn't working, or somebody gets sick, and it's like there's all these little offshoots of the river where you're no longer paralleling. But
Right.
it doesn't mean you're ghosting each other in relationship. You don't have the same amount to
You don't
share. You
have the
don't
same
have the same,
values in those
yeah,
moments.
hot and sexy, whatever was going on. And so same thing with friendships. I feel like it's not a ghosting. It's like we move toward that which is easier to flow with. We move toward that which is more like who we are. And it doesn't mean moving against. We're not moving against the friends having babies, or against the friend who has become a corporate CEO. We're not moving against, we're moving toward the thing that's more like us, maybe. And so this is why I don't like the term micro ghosting, unless because the term ghosting has like a little bit of reactivity to it. So if there's micro ghosting, maybe it's the people that are upset by the way a friend changed. Maybe we could say it like that, rather, and to create a distinction between the micro ghosting as sort of a reactionary upset, almost taking it personally that friend is not the same as they used to be, or they're interested in different things, or they wear nice clothes now, or I don't know, their high paying job makes them different, or like, and they're
Mm-hmm.
annoyed with that. Like maybe micro ghosting belongs in that sort of like, I'm irritated that you changed kind of, and so I don't feel like
Right.
calling you because it's
Oh,
reactionary, versus
right.
growing apart, or just having different, your rivers flowing in a slightly different direction right now. No love different, but bandwidth and time and focus and value and change changes how much energy you have, you know?
Mm, mm,
So
mm.
I think I like the distinction of, I like that I knew that I didn't like the idea that micro ghosting was, maybe if I could, you know, hurl my own definition onto it, that there's some irritation about it
Yeah.
versus just literally kind of growing apart differently with a different life, but you still love them, and you still send love to them on your rings of Saturn. They're just not as much a part of your daily life because your daily life is very different.
Right. And we are all growing, and we don't want to stay exactly the same, but it feels like the coming back to purpose, the purpose of maintaining a friendship, even with people whose lives have changed, who look different. And the underlying purpose is still that there's juice to be gained from those long-term friendships, even if we're in a different season. And I think when I get together like with my friends from high school, we're all so different. Oh my God. But we do talk about the things that we have in common. And yes, we all share about the uniquenesses, but we kind of err on the side of what we still have in common. And that's refreshing and rejuvenating. Um, and I always think to myself, if possible, when not to hurt myself, my charge is to enlarge. And the little poem is, my charge is to enlarge, not not my thighs, not my butt, not my thighs, but the size of my heart, so that there can be room for everybody, ideally. And it's not going to be with everybody 24 hours a day, but I don't know. There's just something here. I feel like I'm getting a little bit too like up in my head about it, but I do think there are seasons in friendship, and ideally we would support that. And like if you get really busy doing something, then we keep some form of connection, but like you do you. We want each other to grow. We want each other to be as full and as thriving and as deep and juicy as possible, even if that means not as much time together. And I guess that's why we go back to the for fun and for free. It's like, if there's not an expectation that you are supposed to be by my side 24 hours a day, even if there was a period of time that you were, and that was the best, and everything else is just less, I feel like there's little bits of poison. Okay. Where purpose, I think, becomes really practical is in the moments where there might be some big reaction. So I'm thinking about someone in my life that I've recently, I feel blasted, like I just got blasted. And what it felt like to me was that she scratched an itch at the expense of our connection, because it felt better, it felt truer. And even from an Enneagram perspective, the 4, which is the romantic, or it's the individualist, there's this, I want to be true to my feelings. I don't want to suppress. Suppression is like horrible. So I'm being honest, I'm being true. And in this moment, I think you're garbage and I hate your guts. So she didn't say those words. I'm making those up so those could be funny, but she said things that to me were equivalent. And it felt like there was this, so honoring her emotions in the moment, that she was willing to sever the decades and decades of what we had built because of a moment. So if we keep purpose in our mind, and this is for everything we do, like why are we writing the book? Why are we going to work? Why are we taking care of the kids? Why am I taking care of my sick spouse or parents? Like, what's the why? What am I getting out of this from a deeper soul perspective or a deeper psychological perspective? That why, I think, keeps me in the game, and it keeps me from losing it over little things. Even my dad, when he was in the hospital a few weeks ago, and I went to pick him up from the ER ER, urgent care, I don't know, one of those, and I got COVID, and while I was in the hospital, but it was a sacred moment with my dad. It was a sacred time that I got to have with him. I didn't know I was going to get COVID, but going there and being there in a tough moment was like, he's my dad. He's special to me. These are precious moments. This is building something that is important to me. Yes, this is the most awful environment. Yes, this situation sucks. This isn't a good time, Charlie moment, but I get from it because I get to have this deepened relationship with somebody who's sacred to me. These are privileged moments as opposed to just being short-term oriented, purpose oriented versus that scratch the itch short term. Blech. Okay, back to you, Buff.
Well, first of all, ouch, regarding someone scratching their itch on you.
Right.
And, it's funny. I know we talk about radical responsibility, but I
Yeah.
keep seeing this new lens for like,
Ooh.
this new lens is what's my opportunity? And it's not new. It's not new, but I have a new layer of like my son and my nephew are going through really big things.
Yes. Oh.
And and yes, I'm in Al-Anon, and yes, I'm having codependent recovery. And I
Mm.
know we've mentioned just a couple times the Enneagram, which is a personality typing system, and we're kind of all into it right now. And I'm a 2, which is the helper and the giver. And and I'm seeing these layers and layers and layers coming off of me of like, why am I helping? Why am I doing? This is my mask. My mask thinks helping and doing is going to keep me safe. And I hope that I remember the purpose of why I'm saying this, because I'm getting into a story and I want to make sure and bring it back to purpose.
Hmm.
Um, Okay, I remember, because you were telling the story about the person that hurt you, and they unleashed on you their scratch, their itch of their upset, and they wanted to have their right to their feelings and their right to express themselves, and they didn't want to suppress. And in other episodes, we talk about radical responsibility, meaning not suppressing your feelings, but also not expressing them in a violent way directly on the person who activated your trigger and that we're responsible for our triggers. And I was bringing this back around to this new lens that I have about like, this
Mm.
problem isn't about my son. This problem isn't about my nephew or the people that are ill in my life or the people that are challenged with
Oh.
making life. It's not
Hmm.
about them. It's about me
Yep.
and my opportunity every day to handle what is with my tools and rules. How can okay, so here's my son struggling. I want nothing more than to pick him up, grab him, hold him to my chest, take care of him, make sure he's okay, give him everything that he needs. And yet, A, he's not asking for that. B, I'm not his God. C, there is a trajectory for his life and his suffering that I can't know what it is
Right.
for.
Hmm.
Just taking away his suffering deprives him of his dignity. I'm in pain because he's in pain. I feel guilty because I feel like I should be doing more. And sometimes it seems like he wants me to be doing more.
Hmm.
And my job is, what's the opportunity? How do I purposefully use each circumstance to
Mm.
become someone I'm proud of, to live up to my own values, to truly trust this flow of river that we sometimes call divine intelligence or God or physics or life or action and reaction or action consequence. Like, how do I listen to that tiny voice inside of me that tells me what is my next step to do, that I'm really moved to do from deep inside of me, not from that mask that I put on in order to continue to maintain this helper that I like to be, so you'll love me and like me and not vote me off the island, but truly, like, how can how can I learn my best lessons in the face of what the lesson plan is? Like, the lesson plan is what's happening, and the lesson is, can I apply all these beliefs and values I have regarding the purpose of relationship, of friendship, of family, of interacting with community? Can I apply my values to all those circumstances? Purpose being that I continue to grow, that I be the best
Mm.
person I can be, that I can be the
Right.
inspiration that I want to be. Can I apply that value set to the circumstance, instead of the circumstance doing something to me, can I apply my values to the circumstance?
Nice.
Can I make purpose out of the circumstance so that I make something out of myself that I'm proud of? So if you want to wrap up your end, I feel
Ooh,
wrapped on
honey,
mine.
that was good. That is so good. I mean, like, what if all of this is happening for us? I mean,
For
it's
us, not to
exactly
us.
not to us, for us. And maybe it is. And I think Viktor Frankl would agree. Um, one of his quotes, I just looked this one up. Let's see. He's got so many quotes that are about purpose, but he says, in some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning, such as the meaning of sacrifice. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by the lack of meaning and purpose.
Oh, you have to send it to me.
Yes.
Don't click, don't close.
I will. Yeah. So if we, in other words, when we can find purpose, even if we have to make it up,
Yeah.
then we are,
He made
there's,
it up.
yeah. I mean, it's, and P.S., it's all made up. I mean,
All
if you
made
ever
up.
did Landmark, it's like, P.S., spoiler alert, it's all made up. And so what is the meaning we make up? I think the nutshell of the meaning that I/we are sort of making up about this friendship is our bigger why, our bigger purpose is that we become the most fully expressed, fully light-filled beings that we came here to be. And our friendship helps us to work this out, and the relationships that are even more grueling, they're also helping to test our mettle. They're helping to show us what our limitations are, show us how we don't want to be. Some people are in our lives. Someone said once, some people incarnate with the entire purpose of showing us how not to be. So sometimes when we're interacting with those people, we go out, note to self, not going to be like that. I'm not going to just scratch my itch all over somebody. I want to be responsible because I know what that feels like. So purpose, I think, is underlying all of it. And it does dignify the challenges, because we can look at it from the perspective of, I signed up for this. What if this is exactly the curriculum that I stood in line for thousands of years to get, and I got it? And I just was writing about school dreams for the insider.com, and one of the things I was talking about was how, like, problems, in the solving of problems, we become smarter. That's why we're given math problems, all kinds of problems in school, so that we develop ourselves. So relationships are a great place for that. Sometimes we need to let them go when we've tried everything and we're feeling like our well-being is being taxed. But if we can hang in there and have a breakthrough, it's not just for us. And here's the other thing, it's not just for us. What if it is on behalf of the greater good of the collective? What if these little moments of turning our pain into purpose and turning our dross into gold, what if we're adding some value to the Akashic records, the big library of consciousness somewhere? What if these little things that we have breakthroughs within, what if they are serving a greater, greater purpose? So on that note,
I do have more to say though.
do
I
it, Joe, do it.
Okay.
Take
All
it.
right. Yeah.
Run.
First of all, we're putting a lot of emphasis on pain and suffering and struggle, and this is a friend
Yeah.
podcast, and so hopefully your friends aren't causing you this much pain. Um, but I wanted to say I feel like this is a tweetable.
Oh, good.
Friends are the place where we alchemize our pain.
Yes. Yeah.
Like our
Yes.
some of our family or our friends or circumstances or illnesses or loss or whatever. Like our friends are that place that we go to get salve for some of the harder things. And then hopefully if you have a friend who plays by similar rules as we do, honest reflection regarding our responsibility when we're ready,
Yeah.
when we're ready, emphasis on when we're ready. And I also want to say something about when you talked about like signing up for this class, like thousands of years ago or something,
Yeah.
like, for those of us, sometimes I get a little allergic to thoughts that I signed up for things, or that the universe did it to me, or God chose it for me, or anything. So I just want to say how often I say I like what this lesson is making out of me, but I hate the class. Like
Right.
sometimes I hate the class.
Right.
And also I want to do one little plug about the
Yeah.
purpose of taking space in relationships.
Ooh.
The purpose of taking space in relationships is
Yeah.
we can gather ourselves and be the person we want to be, to come back to that relationship with the best, with a better self, and so that we don't scratch itches
All
by
over
hurling on
everybody.
each other, all over each other, because it just does damage. And the
Yeah.
very thing we're often hurling about is, well, I'm being honest because I value honesty and I value expression. If I can't be honest here, then
What are you, a
friendship is over.
snowflake? You can't even
Yeah.
handle my
You
feelings.
can't handle the truth. It's like, no, I'm not a mouse. Did you not listen to the first podcast? I'm a little mouse. I am scared. Please don't hurt me this way.
Right.
So I just want to say how important space is in relationships too, not just friendships, but relationships. And sometimes friendships need space as well, so we can gather ourselves and bring ourselves back with the love that we had when we originally met, and to honor and dignify the friendship. So I don't know if I thought I heard you mention space earlier, but it was about hurling because someone hurled on you. And so I just want to say space is such a necessary part of friendship and the deep relationships. If your friendships actually get that activated, space is an important salve, because if someone acts poorly and then you act in reaction, this isn't kindergarten and it's not about who started it. We have to keep our dignity and move away and take space so that we don't perpetuate the cycle of poor treatment. And the other person's like, well, you yelled too, well, you started it, well, you did it anyway. Like, this is not kindergarten. We are adults, right? We are adults. If we want to have adult friendships and adult relationships, we have to act like the adults that we wish the other person was acting like. Just because they started it doesn't mean you perpetuate. And guess what? If you're a reactor, you owe the same apology as if you were the perpetuator. You have to be responsible for your reactivity if you're playing by our radical responsibility rules. Those are
If you want to play
ours.
in our sandbox,
These are the rules. So anyway, I would love to say the purpose of friendships is it's a place to alchemize our lives together with safety and love. It's a place to alchemize our pain. It's a place to be heard. It's a place to be mothered and loved. It's a place to be reflected to with honesty and mercy. The purpose of friendships are so deep and so valuable. They're worthy of caring for delicately. They're worthy of not scratching itches on. They're worthy of taking really, really, really valuable care of. So that's what I have to say. And it was just our birthdays. And so I value the day you were born as one of the most important days in my life, because I just don't know who I'd be without you. I just would not be someone I'm proud to be if you weren't in my life. Not as proud as I am. Not pride, proud.
Thank you so much. I feel the same way. I can't even imagine the shit show I would be if it weren't for you. I would be a reactivity machine. I would be either suppressing or hurling in all the wrong places. I don't know. All I know is that, yeah, the classroom sometimes is up for question, but the lessons and the blessings and the joy. Yeah, there's a lot of friggin' joy. Oh my God. It can be hard, but it can also be magnificently magical and joyous. And thank you so much, Joe, for co-creating this whole segment with me. And I'm excited about where we go from here.
Cool.
Thank you for joining us on Anatomy of Friendship.
If this has been helpful to you, or if you have questions or comments,
please share them with us at anatomyoffriendship.com.
If you haven't yet, take a moment to follow, like, and subscribe to our show.
And don't forget to share it with a friend or two or a few.
Special shout out to Dana Walden at Love Hub Productions for being our engineer, producer, and for writing our friendship song.
And Karina Grandma for being the voice of our song. Take it away, Karina.